Hi, Honey Family. Welcome back to another episode. So this week's is a little different than normal. It's still a story time, but I found something this week. I don't remember if I saw it on Facebook or if someone sent it to me. It comes from phantomsandmonsters.com, and they found an account about a possible Wendigo at Red River Gorge. And then they linked to another article of a similar weird experience there. Red River Gorge is fairly close to me, enough that we go there for day trips semi-regularly. It's just around 29,000 acres of land, and there's over 100 stone arches, tons of sandstone cliffs and rock shelters and beautiful waterfalls. It really is a beautiful, picturesque place to spend the day, hike, rock climb. Rock climbing is a big thing there. And you can camp there. It's a great location. And so I found these stories to be rather interesting, and I hope that you do too. Account 1. I have no idea what we saw exactly that night. I've searched everywhere for sightings or even myths around the area. We saw it and found nothing. My husband and I think it could be a Wendigo, but I don't know. I haven't heard anyone else say they've seen anything like it in Red River Gorge. I guess I want help figuring out what we saw and what to do after the night I'm about to describe, but I think we've had some close encounters since with it. My friends and I go camping a lot, and my favorite place is in the Red River Gorge. We go there often. I've been ever since I was a kid. I'm 28 now, married, with a kid, and still go. It is the closest place to where I live, where you can see the Milky Way pretty much every night. It's perfect for stargazing. I've seen a shooting star every clear night I've been there. When we go without our kid, we will night hike to a good lookout point and stargaze for hours. Our first experiences night hiking would go to trails we knew well and were used frequently during the day, ones with big log fences and gazebo resting places. The most used trail is a trail in Natural Bridge State Park that leads up to the Natural Bridge. This trail is around 2 miles uphill, depending on your starting point. I've done this trail every summer of my life and can do it blindfolded. It has wooden steps, carved rock steps, log handrails, multiple setting points, under a roof, trash cans. But after reaching the main trailhead, it has no lights at all. It's used often, and while it's uphill, the difficulty is low. As long as you have a good grip on your shoes and water, you'll be fine. My friends have done it with me multiple times and are confident in it as well. Hiking this trail at night is not allowed, but it's in the woods, and I've never really been one to care about closing times for the literal outside. When we use this main trail to hike to the top, we would park in a lot designated for the pool and Hoedown Island. You walk across the road that leads to the pool, and you're at your first trail marker. You go up gravel for a while, past the Natural Bridge State Park Lodge. There's a waterfall and some lights, so it's best to go fast and watch out for rangers that would tell us to leave. Then you walk across another road, and there's a mini shelter to sit in, or a small rock wall to rest your legs. Then, it's the beginning of the trail to the top. The night was weird to begin with. As soon as we started the hike, the clouds took over, and it appeared we were walking for nothing to even stargaze at. But we went anyway, just in case it cleared out by the time we got up there. In the beginning, it was just normal paranoia that was keeping us stressed out and quiet, it seemed. You know you've reached the bottom of the bridge when you see a giant limestone wall. During this time, there was a gazebo that sat to the right of the wall, and the trail continued and followed next to the wall, where you come to a fairly steep part of the trail, and the gazebo is welcome. My husband, my best friend at the time, and I all sat at the gazebo steps. The bench is under the roof and even darker than the rest of the outside, so we just stayed on the steps, facing to where we were looking down at the trail that follows the limestone wall. We each have a bright LED headlamp and a handheld flashlight. We don't usually look at each other when we night hike because the lights are so bright. We sit in a line like the Lord's Supper and walk in a line or staggered so we don't blind ourselves. It's after hours at this point. No sky lift rides had gone on for hours, and the rangers had already gone and done their sweep and left right before we got out of our car and headed up. We left no time between them making sure the trail and the top were clear and us starting our hike. The sky lift takes you up to the top, but there are workers there that stay and do counts and only leave after it's clear. I guess I have to make these points because that's what I was thinking when what seemed out of nowhere, a girl with a headlamp begins to walk down the trail we are looking at. She's in a sundress and flip-flops. This hike is uphill, and while it's fairly easy to hike, it is not easy with no water or real shoes. She'd have to hike up and down to this point with no food or water. Her light was bright, and when she reached where the trail turns from in front of the gazebo to down where we came from, she stopped. She just stood there, straight on, like how a human is presented in anatomical drawing. She was looking directly at us all, sitting there, and her light made me bring my hand up to shield my eyes. She didn't turn away from our lights at all, or even seem bothered. She had 6 LED lights aimed directly at her face. I said hello. She said, kind of with a pause between every word, something like, hello, how are you? I said something like, good, how are you? She took even longer pauses and said, oh, I'm fine. She then just stood there, still with her hands to her side and facing and staring at us. Her light made it impossible to really see her face, and it was so bright. I had my hand up the entire time until she just turned and walked slowly down the trail part we had just came up from. She got to the part where the trail turned, and we saw her light just stay in that one spot for a minute until she turned and the light faded out of sight. We waited for a while before continuing up. I kept making comments about how weird that was, and everyone else just made it out like me being afraid. But no one ever came after her. She had done this hike alone, at night, and somehow without getting found by any ranger. We got up after a bit and started back up to the top. It felt like it took much longer than it ever had in the past, but we made it to the top. There's stone steps named Fat Man's Squeeze that gets you to the top of the bridge, and you can walk out across it and whatever. Going up and being on top, we could hear twigs snapping, almost alternating from left then right. We lay down and tried to stargaze, but the clouds were even thicker now, and it was miserably hot. We could hear voices at times, and my husband kept checking for people we heard. He never saw anyone. We saw a light flash, but never saw anyone attached to it. And then we heard a bird call, but it wasn't like any real bird noise at all. It sounded like a person making bird calls, like rhythmic and not really natural. I was convinced we weren't alone, and hadn't been alone, but also, I'm the most easily spooked in the group. I asked to leave as soon as they were ready, too, and they were ready right then and there, and that scared me, that they were just as afraid as me at that point. We began going down the way we came, and it felt like it was taking too long. We were going steady and quick, and it was downhill, but we were not making any ground, it seemed. It was hard to explain, but it was so weird that at one point I even said it out loud. I said, this feels much longer, and they agreed with me. I kept looking behind me with flashlight, and my husband kept looking out to the sides. My friend kept hers mostly forward. I kept feeling watched, and couldn't figure out what footsteps were ours, or if they were all ours that I heard. I would turn in the direction of any noise, but not see anything. When my husband was walking, he kept saying he was catching eyes in his flashlight. Usually you catch raccoon eyes spying on you, or some animal like that. He was afraid maybe a bear, or a big dog, or something, and he never got his lights on whatever eyes they were, long enough to see the animal size or shape. Now we're hiking down a semi-flattish area, compared to the downhill hike we've been doing at least. The log fence or handrail, or whatever it's called, is on our right side. We are in a row, walking, within reaching distance of this barrier, and my husband just stops walking altogether and says, what's that? But the question is more like an alert, and I move my headlamp in the direction, and I don't see anything at first. Then both of his lights catch a shape, and then my headlamp catches it, and I move my hand lamp to center and catch it, while my friend simultaneously finds it with her lights as well. All 6 lights shine onto and kind of reflect off a light gray creature. It is bent in a crouching position, kneeling on its right leg, and it starts turning towards us. It starts to slowly stand, and mine is racing still. It looks human, but it's too big. People mistake human shapes for what is actually bears in the woods often, but this is skinny. It's thin and big and almost white. It's so light gray, and its skin resembles dolphin skin. There's a shine to it, and our lights reflect a little when it's on it. It gradually comes to a full standing position in front of us. Its head is long, and its eyes are in a human position on its face. in front and not on side like animals, but I could not see any other facial features, just big, almost empty holes or pits that were its eyes. It looked directly at us and our lights. The way it stood was intimidating, almost like when a snake rises up and flicks their necks, all crazy to show prey that they are stronger and smarter. It was like it was stepping up to a fight, from crouching, then turning, then standing in front of us. The arms hung down low, and the hands seemed long too. Its hands had to be by its knees. I guess it stood 9 feet or so, and not that far in front of us. No hair at all. Its head was large as well. I couldn't process what I saw, and was frozen. Then I just feel my husband hitting me on the back and yelling, "Run, run, run." I start to understand we have to get away from this thing, and it pivots and runs to the right, going backwards on the trail, so it could get around the barrier and onto the trail behind us. We take off running the rest of the way down the trail, knowing that this thing just took off much faster than us, and after it had crossed from behind the barrier, it would be gaining on us quick. We didn't talk at all, because when we tried, it felt almost like we could get caught. We kept running as fast as we can, but some areas are so steep, it never felt like we were out of sight from this creature. As we made it to the trail beginning, with the gravel, we could hear something to the side, crashing down through the forest. We ran until we got to the car, and then we drove as fast as we could, and as soon as we got to the main road, the clouds cleared up, and the stars were out. When that thing looked at us, I knew it was smarter and faster than us. I knew that if we hadn't seen it, that it could have easily taken one of us and gotten away. I think the only reason it hesitated was because so many of us saw it at once, and we stayed together. When we made it back to where we were staying, all of us took our phones out and wrote a note for what we saw happen. We hadn't spoken about it until after we looked at each other's phones, and the stories were the same. Without a doubt, we had all seen something real. KK. Story 2, or Experience 2. My wife and I were taking a small vacation trip last October to Red River Gorge. After a day full of hiking and grabbing some dinner, we returned to our room to get some sleep. At about 3 in the morning, my wife woke me, saying she was having severe stomach pain. I, being the dutiful husband I am, got dressed and hopped in the car to run down the road to pick up some stuff to settle her stomach, only to discover that things shut down for the night around here. After consulting with Google, I found a 24-hour gas station about 30 minutes away and began my drive. After locating the exit, I began to slow down. I was somewhat paranoid of hitting a deer or something, especially since I was in unfamiliar territory. As I made my exit, lo and behold, a deer ran out in front of me. As I watched it cross the road, I noticed something behind it. It was the outline of a man, but there was nothing solid to him. I could see right through him, yet still clearly see his form. Now I am wide awake, with the deer having startled me, but having no explanation for what I saw. It crossed the road and continued on after the deer. For the rest of the trip, I kept feeling like I was being watched, and continued to have uneasy feelings for several days after. Anyways, there's a brief rundown of my very first encounter with the Glimmer Man, J.W. So, a little brief tidbit about Wendigos. I don't think that any of the native tribes from our area, from this part of eastern Kentucky, had a belief about Wendigos. They may have, I don't know. But in most cultures that believed in Wendigos, they were very malevolent, cannibalistic creatures. There are some groups, the Cree and Ojibwe, there may be others that actually have a ceremony, a Wendigo ceremony, that they perform during times of famine that involves dancing backwards around a drum, and that's just a very basic overview of it. Because the Wendigo is supposed to be the embodiment of gluttony and greed and excess. He's never satisfied. That's why they are always described as being so painfully thin, but tall. They grow in proportion to the last meal they consume, the last person they consume. But they don't put on they don't get nourishment from it. They're never satisfied from that. I hope that made sense. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed.